We are looking at the possibility of severe weather for the south on our Thursday as the east turns warm and the west turns cold. An atmospheric river impacts the Pacific Northwest. All this and more next at the Weather Farm. Welcome to the Weather Farm. I'm meteorologist Christopher Hale. We have a packed forecast for you that's going to bring a threat of severe weather to the south on our Thursday. So let's dive right into the details. As we begin our Wednesday, we are seeing areas of snow across British Columbia moving into northern Alberta. High pressure is in control over the Intermountain West. We have snow across the Four Corners region. This is the remnants of what brought those heavy rains and snows to Southern California. That is now moving east. It's going to then start to interact with moisture from the Gulf as we get towards our Thursday, and that is going to set the stage for some severe weather. We have a northwesterly flow across the upper Great Plains into the Great Lakes. That's bringing a shot of slightly cooler air across that area. And if we look across the northeast, we have a clipper system that has moved from the Great Lakes into the northeast, and we have another one right on its heels. This clipper system out in the east is going to bring a little bit of snow on our Wednesday. In terms of our snowfall, we are generally going to see a wide swath of 2 to 5 inches across parts of Ontario, stretching towards Buffalo and into northern New York. We could see some isolated higher amounts of 6 to 10 inches. But as we get into Vermont and New Hampshire, amounts will be lighter, generally in the 1 to 3 inch range. As we look at our Thursday, that snow has moved out of New England. That low clipper system is skirting the Canadian border, but our attention now turns to this low pressure that has moved out of the Four Corners region into Texas, is now interacting with that counterclockwise rotation and pulling a lot of moisture from the Gulf as it begins to deepen that low pressure system. We also have a tight temperature gradient across the south, and this is going to fuel those thunderstorms by the time we get to Thursday afternoon. Across Colorado, we are seeing some snow in those higher elevations, and still across parts of British Columbia, an atmospheric river continues to send rain to the coastline and snow to the mountains area. Mountainous regions could see 3 to 4 feet of snow as another low pressure system continues to move out of British Columbia towards Alberta. And this is the general pattern that we are going to start seeing. Lows are going to come into Alberta, into the Pacific Northwest. They're going to generally stay north of the Canadian border as they follow these winds, and they're going to dive slightly into the northeast. So the northeast is going to continue to be a little bit cooler, but for the majority of the United States, we are going to see zonal flow as we go into our Thursday. By the time we get to our Friday, that low pressure system has ejected up towards Chicago. Out ahead of it, it is spreading heavy amounts of rain. And behind it, we're going to get some wrapping in of that cooler air that may briefly change this rain over to some snow as it begins to exit the Chicagoland region Friday afternoon into Friday evening. That rain then moves all the way into the East Coast, into Maryland, and to southern Pennsylvania as it continues to move east. We still have that pattern along the Canadian border where the storm track and the polar jet is all locked up north of Canada. And still out west, we continue to get inundated with heavy rains, this time now stretching down through Washington into Oregon and spreading those heavy snows across the interior mountainous regions. Heavy snow also making its way into western Alberta and into Idaho for our Friday. And by the time we get to Saturday, that system that went through the south, it's now moved way off the coast. We continue to see amounts of moisture continuing to flow onshore. But the thing you'll now notice is we have a lot more snow across the Pacific Northwest. We are seeing a jab of colder air that's dislodged from the Yukon, made its way down through British Columbia, is now setting shop up parts of the Pacific Northwest into Washington, Oregon, Idaho, and into Montana. This area of low pressure is going to continue to bring snow showers to those mountainous regions. This is going to set the stage for some of the coldest temperatures this part of the country has seen all year. As I mentioned, we are really focused on that Pacific Northwest and the heavy amounts of snow that are going to be falling. Along the Cascades, we could easily see 2 to 3 feet of snow, especially through Washington. And then we get over into Idaho, into those mountainous regions of Idaho, we could see 12 to 18 inches common. But if we get up here to British Columbia and some of those higher mountainous regions up here, we could see 4 to 5 feet of snow. And we see the rainfall amounts along the coast, a widespread 1 to 3 inches of rain, isolated pockets with that yellow of 4 inches. Where we see the yellow up here, that's primarily up in those mountainous regions, but liquid equivalents of 4 to 5 inches of rains. Same thing as we go through Washington down into Oregon. This is the mountainous regions. So this is all going to fall as snow in those higher elevations. But as we make our way down in northern California, 1 to 2 inches of snow. We make our way into eastern Washington and into eastern Oregon. As that precipitation downslopes off of the mountain, it has dumped its precipitation as it's lifted up over the mountain. So we don't have as much precipitation on the other side of the mountain, but still 1/4 of an inch of rain is likely for most of those areas as we go through our Sunday. So putting everything into motion as we start on our Wednesday, there's that system beginning to build with that snow. Pacific Northwest is getting inundated. We're going to see a chance of severe storms here for our Thursday into Thursday night. We're going to watch this line as it continues to move east. That low pressure then moves off to the northeast. And out west, we continue to see atmospheric river moisture flowing on shore. But here comes that colder air into Washington and Oregon that is going to set the stage again for some of those coldest temperatures. And then the main storm track does stay along the Canadian border as we go into early next week. So let's take a look at our severe weather threat. So already the Storm Prediction Center has placed most of Louisiana under a slight risk of thunderstorms for our Thursday. We have a marginal risk from Texas into Arkansas, and we even have a slight risk extending all the way north to Iowa, through Illinois, and then into Mississippi. We're going to get a tight temperature gradient. We're going to have strong southwesterly winds ahead of this storm. What's that going to do is it's going to help fuel this storm. We're going to tap a lot of moisture out of the Gulf, and that moisture is going to be transported northward as far north as the Kentucky-Tennessee border, where we could see rainfall amounts easily of 2 inches of rain. Down here across the deep south, where you saw nearly 8 to 10 inches of snow last weekend, you're going to see significant amounts of rain for our Thursday into Friday. And so we're going to look here also at another indicator of why we think that there could be some severe weather. And even this includes the possibility of tornadoes for our Thursday into Friday. We're looking at something called the storm relative helicity. This measures the rotation and the motion of the storms from the surface up to about 3 kilometers. So the higher that ratio is of storm relative motion and the helicity, or the circulation in the atmosphere, the more likely we are to see tornadoes spin up in those supercells. So when we get above 250, 300, so we start getting into these reds, into these purples, and those higher colors, like we see through Arkansas, through Louisiana, into Mississippi, and even into far northern or southwestern Tennessee by the time we get to Thursday evening, this is an area we are going to be watching for the potential of supercell development that could rotate in those upper levels of the atmosphere and produce some tornadoes. We can also look at the hodographs. We see those hodographs, and hodographs, what they do is they measure the wind direction and the velocity as air moves up from the surface to 1 kilometer, 2 kilometers, up to 6 kilometers. So here it starts, and then as it moves up and around, it's telling the direction. And then as far out from the circle, it tells the wind speed in meters per second. Where we start to see these hodographs starting to curl, like we see here in Arkansas, here as well as parts of Louisiana, that indicates that as the surface winds at the surface are blowing in one direction, but as they go up higher in the atmosphere, it is turning. So there's rotation from the surface up. When we get that counterclockwise rotation going, that is what helps fuel those supercells and those tornadoes. We also, on this particular map, it's not only a hodograph map, but it also measures the level of CAPE in the atmosphere. And so we start to see strong CAPE values of around 1,000 joules per kilogram from southeastern Texas, making their way into Louisiana and up towards Arkansas. Again, this is Thursday afternoon, so we start to see a lot of things coming together to indicate that there could be some rotation and some severe weather from Arkansas to Mississippi down through Louisiana. And this isn't uncommon for this time of the year. In fact, what was uncommon was 8 to 10 inches of snow. But this time of year, we do see tornadoes through Louisiana, through Mississippi, through the deep south. That is where the tornado alley is at this time of the year. So we're going to continue to watch that and monitor it, and we will bring you the latest information. But in terms of precipitation, we are going to see heavy amounts of rain. 1 to 3 inches from Austin up through Dallas, up towards Arkansas. Arkansas, we could see pockets of 4 to 6 inches of rain. That heavy rain's in play for southeastern Oklahoma and into Mississippi as well. As we make our way up towards the Ohio Valley, we're going to see across parts of Kentucky 1 to 2 inches of rain. As we get further north through Missouri, Illinois, Indiana, and Ohio, we're going to see lesser amounts, up to 1 inch is possible. And after we get through this weekend storm, this is where we're going to see that trough digging. That's going to bring that cold air into the northwest as we begin our week. And that cold air is just going to spread like the storm pattern across the Canadian border because we have ridging that's building. We have a very west to east flow. It is going to be warm temperatures or seasonal temperatures. And actually, by the time we get to the middle of next week, we start to see a ridge build in the center, and we have troughs on the corners of the United States. That is going to be our pattern as we go into February. We'll get here in the east a jab or two of cold every now and then, primarily in the northeast and primarily in the northwest is where we will see those cold jabs. But the main story is going to be these ridges that are going to form from the Rockies through the Central Plains into the Ohio and Tennessee Valley. It's going to provide near normal to above normal temperatures for our February. In fact, if we look at our temperatures here on our Sunday, we see very seasonal temperatures, if not slightly above normal for most areas by 10 to 15 degrees. The real cold temperatures are kept north of the Canadian border, and even across parts of the Dakotas, we're looking at single digits. As we move into our Monday, it's still pretty much the same. A little bit cold air tries to move south into Nebraska and Iowa, Minnesota, highs in the teens and 20s, but still we have near normal temperatures for most of the United States. That cold air does make a little bit further east progression, dropping temperatures a few degrees below normal through the Ohio Valley, but we are still well above normal across the south, but that cold is just looming here across the north. And by the time we get to the middle of next week, that cold air has made its way into Montana, into Idaho, and into the northern plains with below normal temperatures by the time we get to next Wednesday. And that coincides very well with our temperature outlook from the Climate Prediction Center. For the next 8 to 14 days from next Wednesday, as we make our way towards Valentine's Day, we are expected to see much below normal temperatures across the northwest, the southern plains to the Ohio and Tennessee valleys, through Pennsylvania and towards New York City. Above normal temperatures are expected across the United States. Thank you for joining us here at the Weather Farm. Like, subscribe, share, smash that like button, smash that bell icon so that you are notified each and every time we have a new video here available. We hope you have a great Wednesday, and we'll see you again real soon.